with you, a brown-eyed girl.
Ngā mihi o te ahia he kia koutou katoa. Let's get this next session underway. Hopefully you managed to get a lot out of the sessions before lunch, and hopefully you had a good kai for lunch as well. I'm really excited about our next guest. It was really funny. We were on the same flight to Queenstown last week, and I saw him and I looked at him and I went, oh my God, that's Sir Ian Taylor, and I put my head down. And I said, oh, he won't recognise me, and I was kind of shuffling my way out with my head down. And actually, we've just had a conversation, and Sir Ian was saying, I was going to come and say hello to you too, but I thought, oh, maybe you won't know who I am. I'm like, really? Seriously, Sir Ian Taylor? Anyway, it is time to hear from Sir Ian, and it touches on the po of orangataiao and orangatangata. The New Zealand Technology Hall of Fame laureate in 2010 New Zealander of the Year. Sir Ian Taylor is one of New Zealand's leading men in technology and innovation, known for his work in media, television, and animation. Sir Ian Taylor may be a pioneer in technology and animation, but it is from the past he draws his strength and innovation. In this session, although this may have changed potentially, we'll hear a fresh perspective to the effect of COVID-19 on our planet and how we can ensure Aotearoa is on track to a sustainable future. Ka pai. Please join me in welcoming Sir Ian Taylor to the stage.
Ko mohaka te awa, ko haururu te maunga, ko ngati pahau wera te hapu, ko ngati kāngunu te iwi, tēnā koutou, tērā koutou katoa. Which is just another way of saying, I'm just a simple little Māori fella, brought up on the east coast of the North Island. And I could never have imagined that one day I'd use a thing called a computer to go to a thing called the internet, to go to a thing called Google Earth, to take you back to the house I was brought up in. And that's it. The house I was brought up in the 1950s without electricity. Now there is a Māori whakatauki which I'd like to share with you. Ko ngā tahua o Tapawai and Nānahe, hei to ira ora mō a popo. So for those of you who listen to Guy and Espina, you'll already know what that means. For the Mike Hoskins fans, I've got a translation. The footsteps we laid down in our past create the paving stones of where we stand today. And in the Māori worldview, those footsteps are always in front of us. They are always in front of us. So I can still see the shirt I was wearing as a 7-year-old when the man from the Hawke's Bay Electric Power Board turned up and linked that house to the electric power lines that had been put outside, and with a flick of the switch, Mum lit up the house like daylight. And I'm absolutely sure that that was part of the journey that brings me standing here today to talk to you about technology, because I know nothing about that. Now I'm going to take you, look out at those footsteps, and it's 1990. And I meet this group of students from Otago University. Now this group of students went off to America, and they became the first non-American university team ever to win the World Computer Programming Champs. They're from Otago University, and I remember looking at them thinking, I don't know anything about computers, but sounds like that's going to be a big deal. This is the 1990s. So I popped down to the university, met their professor, and we had a bit of a chat, and a really interesting insight he gave me. In 1990, he said to me, digital data would be the currency of the future. The opportunity is turning digital data into pictures people can understand. And we started that process in 1990. So anyway, I looked at all that, and I remember saying to Jeff, because we were making TV things, and I said to Jeff, gee, if we put what this team's doing with computer graphics with what we do in TV, one day we could get a job in Auckland. So we thought, sure, let's go. So on a handshake, we started a computer technology company in Dunedin. Now we had to get a computer, so we got one of those. There it is, 10 megabytes. That's about $12,000 today. So that's how we started. Now one of the really cool things about deciding that you're going to start a technology company, not only at the bottom of the world, bottom of New Zealand, but at the bottom of the world, is you simply don't know what you don't know. So we just started doing shit. In 1992, we changed the way the world viewed yacht racing. I took up golf and said to the team, get me to all the best golf tournaments in the world. We're one of only 2 companies in the world allowed to do the DRS. We built a Formula One simulator for one of the world's leading Formula One teams. We built an air traffic control simulator for training air traffic controllers around the world. For Whale Watch Kaikoura, we drained the Pacific Ocean, and because we're from Dunedin, and because we could, we blew up Auckland. So one of the things I talk about, so just look at that. I mean, we started in 1990, a group of students, straight out of university, had no idea. One of the really cool things as you look at that is that we never wrote a business plan. I've been in business for 32 years. I've never written a business plan. I don't know what one would look like. And the question I ask is, we always look at these footsteps in front of us to decide where we go in the future. If I looked at that in 1990, what on that screen would have been in any business plan I wrote? Absolutely nothing. So one of the things, the closest we got to a business plan, which probably makes a little sense of why I've been asked to speak here, was that we were all really big sports enthusiasts. So the closest we got to business plan, because suddenly there's digital data out there, right? So we looked at this and thought, how do we use technology to get to all the best sports events in the world for free? And so we just set out. And even though we might never have written a business plan, this would have been my, board statement or whatever it is, one of those things, that you give. This would have been it in 2020 to see how we lived up to that business plan. So, just turn that down a little bit. So, as we said, how do we use it? And we only did sports we liked. That was the other thing. That was really important. Because you had to go to them all. Why the hell do you want to go to a sport you don't like? So anyway, see this? This is the cricket. And I don't have time to show you, but we developed the technology for that using a box of Jaffas and a piece of wood. And there goes the Jaffa. We've put some music up so we can... I've chosen Whole of the Moon because for 32 years I've worked with a group of people who never look for the crescent, they only look for the whole of the moon. Everything you see here on the screen is a first and started with a box of Jaffas. Ooh, this one here. So one of our guys is a real Formula One nutter, one of the founders, first guys that start with us. So now we have to go to all these boring places like Monte Carlo, things. So we do Formula One because one guy loved Formula One. He started with us in 1990, he's still there and they're still using that software. I said, get me to all the best golf tournaments in the world. We now do every golf tournament in the world, except Live. That's over there. Every golf tournament. And these are the sort of graphics that you have probably seen. Well, they're all coming from a little company that started in Dunedin and said, we're never leaving Dunedin except to go to all the best sports events in the world. And they actually pay us to do this now, so that's a plus. And now, baseball. I have never been to a game of baseball in my life. We do 3,000 games of baseball a year. So this is an example of some of those. And I'll talk to you about how we got to do that. But again, you only do sports you like. Baseball looks really, really boring. So we just do it from Dunedin. And I go back in 1992. We started this journey, and these footsteps started in 1992, 30 years of them. We began with a computer that was the size of a small fridge, cost $500,000, and we couldn't get one in New Zealand, so the two programmers went to America to write the code. In the America's Cup in Auckland, we delivered these graphics to you on the phone you carry in your pocket. But what is more important, I think, in this context, is the two guys who wrote the program in 1992 are still with us, and they wrote the program looking at these graphics, and I'll leave it up to these guys to finish.
21 years after their first successful event on home waters, Emirates Team New Zealand do it again in a new class of boat that proves Kiwis can fly.
So, we saw the whole of the moon. Now, footsteps laid down, I'm going to jump forward, is now January 2020. It's now 2020. I'm looking at there 2020. So here's another really interesting thing. We started in 1990. We didn't make a profit till 2019. That was the first year we made a profit. So 30 years to make a profit. And I didn't notice. I didn't notice that we hadn't made one. We just turned up every day and went to work. And I remember one day Cheryl, our CEO, she put that piece of paper, I think it's spreadsheets, one of those things. And I look, what's that, Cheryl? You haven't seen one of those, that's a profit. That's cool. So anyway, now we're making a profit. 2020 was going to be the biggest year we'd ever had. We had signed every golf contract in the world. We were negotiating with Major League Baseball, NFL. We were about to do the America's Cup in Italy. And January the 11th, I'm on a flight to the first golf tournament of the year in Abu Dhabi, and I pass through Heathrow Airport, grab a Guardian newspaper and a cup of tea, and read this story on page 6. A 61-year-old man has died from pneumonia in a city I'd never heard of in China called Wuhan. Now, I remember reading that and thinking, I wonder how long it'll be before this is on page 1. Never gave it another thought. But again, footsteps. So now we didn't have to wait long at all, because now it's March the 12th, 2020, and our team that's a Thursday. We're at a golf tournament, I think it might have been Sawgrass or one of those, golf tournament in America, and this is what our team looks like. So this is the Thursday. This is everybody from Dunedin, so we travelled all over the world, different country every week, different state every week, so you imagine our carbon footprint. But there we are on Thursday. So that's how we operated all over the world. There was a lot of travel. So anyway, we do this and we come out of Thursday and we've rolled out all this new technology. Everyone's patting us on the back. It's really great. Having a few beers at the pub, and one of the guys gets a text from his partner. Says, I guess this means you're coming home tomorrow. We had no idea what she was talking about. We soon found out. President Trump had declared a state of emergency and announced that in a couple of weeks they'd be closing all borders to certain countries, and that was likely to roll out. We also got a text that night that said there will be no spectators on the golf course tomorrow. By breakfast on Black Friday, March the 13th. Notice I remember all of these because they are footsteps in the past that you never lose sight of. We get another one at breakfast that says there will be no golf on the course at all this weekend. By lunchtime, there was no golf anywhere for the foreseeable future, and within 2 weeks, we'd lost every sporting event in the world. So we'd gone from our biggest year ever to absolute zero. So we packed everybody up, flew them home. Our team has always been run by women. CEO, there's 3 women run the place. So Cheryl, Liz, my wife, and Ellie, who used to be the rep on it. Yeah, good old Ellie. Yeah, anyway, so I called them up and said to Cheryl, we're on our way home. There's 9 of us coming home. We've got 40 people all together. Can you figure out how we make sure that the first message we give to them tomorrow jointly when I get home is that no one is going to lose their jobs? And then I got on the plane and left that to her. The interesting thing, Prince Charles, King Charles now, but he came and visited us once, and Ali said to me, well, when His Royal Highness comes here, you make sure I'm the first person he meets. I'm the receptionist. So anyway, I said, all right, Ali, we do what you... So anyway, I bring him in, we come up, and I go, Your Royal Highness, and standing behind the reception desk is Ali, Liz, and Cheryl. I said, this is Ali, Liz, and Cheryl. They run the place. We just do what they tell us. He leaned over and says, I know exactly how you feel, old boy. They even had a cup of tea for him. So anyway, we've decided that. I arrive home and Cheryl says, right, I've solved the problem. You know that profit that we made? Well, that's gone. Anyway, we wrangled everything together and we were able to tell our staff that we could afford to pay all of them from March till Christmas. And their priority job was to go home. We'd equip them all at home. You go home and your number one priority is look after yourself and anyone who's in that house, and that's it. If that takes you 7 days a week, we've got enough money to pay you to do only that. And if we get to Christmas, and we're all in the shit anyway, so we'll worry about that then. So that was their number one priority, because this was not a business, it was a family. So, because everybody who started with me in 1990 is still there. So anyway, before they were about to go out the door, and they went, well, before you go, seeing you've got nothing to do at home, what I'd like you to do is think about what the world will look like when we come out of COVID. How will we hit the ground running when we come out? And one kind of rule to put around that is don't ever use the word challenge in the same sentence as the word COVID. Only ever use the word opportunity. If we use the word challenge, we're not going to get anywhere because you'll just think of roadblocks. And COVID is here. So only opportunity. So anyway, off they go. I go home. And a week later, I get a call from John Rendell, who's our head of innovation. I'd like to talk about John because John came to us straight from school. John has no qualifications at all. His teacher had this kid rang me up and said, Ian, we've got this young guy here, we can't teach him anything. We bore him, so I think he should come and see you. So he came, started with us straight from school, has been with us for 17 years. Every Emmy Award we've won is because of John. He is an unbelievable genius. So anyway, John's now isolating out the back of Dunedin on his farm with his father, and he calls me up and said, Ian, I've thought of an opportunity. Great, John, what's that? He said, well, imagine if all the sports start again and the borders are still closed. I tell you, it was really hard for me not to say to him, that sounds a shitload like a challenge, John. But I didn't. I said, so what's the opportunity? So, well, there's a couple. The first one is, that carbon footprint you've been moaning on about? Imagine if you didn't have to travel again. I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I'm thinking here that we should design a system that means we do all of the sport around the world from our office in Dunedin. That it was the most outrageous thing I'd ever heard. And we were in lockdown. I said, how are you going to do that, John? So leave it with me for a couple of days. So during lockdown, using Zoom to talk to all of the other teammates, using Zoom to order materials, they designed a system so that on June the 6th, the first sports event in the world to go live was a golf tournament in Texas, and this is how it was delivered.
Meanwhile, golf's PGA Tour officially kicked off this morning, watched closely by Dunedin's Animation Research, who for the first time produced the tour's graphics live from their office 12,000 kilometres away from the action. John Mackenzie reports.
Back with a bang. The American PGA Tour teeing off in Texas this morning, 3 months after it was abandoned due to coronavirus.
Got a decent amount of help.
No fans though, but that wasn't the only difference when it came to the coverage.
Globally connected. Now try to follow this. Using facilities across the world to bring you coverage. In Orlando at the Golf Channel headquarters are Sir Nick, Ian, and Frank. Socially distant, I might add, and in Stamford, Connecticut, mobile production trucks are connected to our facilities here in Fort Worth. Across the country in Burbank, another production studio is remotely supplying scoring graphics, top tracer cameras, and other technology. Across the world, in New Zealand, our virtual eye crew is with us live, supplying all the augmented reality technology you're accustomed to seeing on CBS Golf. It's not quite 8 in the morning Sunday in New Zealand right now.
A long way south of Texas, holed up in a Dunedin workshop, the crew doing the graphics live, something Ian Taylor's team at Animation Research had to create themselves, with international travel not an option.
Having the talkback panel here makes us feel like we're on site, so it feels like we're actually just sitting another truck on the TV compound.
Everything about the setup has a Kiwi touch. From the workshop only being put together yesterday to cardboard cutouts showing the time difference.
It's only 4 or 5 weeks ago we thought, gee, what if we can't get there? And in that time this team has pulled this off.
First, the director calls for a graphic. Elliot here then clicks a few buttons. Next, it appears on screen for the golfing world to see. The first 2 days of coverage will be mostly sponsorship logos, before CBS takes over the coverage where they'll introduce graphics like this.
He went after that one a little bit. You can see the ball speed up to 182. That's the fastest.
Just another way some Kiwi creativity flattened the curve in turbulent times.
So that was January the 6th, 2020. It had never been done before. The equipment we had to send to America didn't arrive in America till Sunday of the week of the golf. It got to the golf venue on Tuesday, was installed on Wednesday, went live on Thursday, and we have done every golf tournament in the world from Dunedin since then. But not only that, it changed everything. So this one here is a weekend where we are doing a golf tournament from Prague in Czechoslovakia, another one from New York, another one from Florida, another one from Abu Dhabi, and 2 Big Bash leagues from Sydney and Melbourne. That would have been impossible before COVID. And one of the really interesting things as we talk about the futurist yesterday, I assume he's not here today, but as we think about those and you look at all of these footsteps behind you, the lesson we learned was this was never a challenge of technology, it was attitude. And when the world came together, like if we had said this to our clients overseas, it would have been, gosh, why would you do that? This all works, business as usual. We don't want to do that. Suddenly, nothing worked. So everybody climbed on board, and in 8 weeks we developed stuff, and we found that the technology was always there. It just hadn't been used like that. So, as we face these problems in the world, just keep in mind, what have we got already that will help us change this? Now, as I mentioned, we do 3,000 games of baseball a year, and we've never been to a game of baseball, so now we do this from Dunedin, and so we do have some operators up there, but we're doing this from Dunedin, which means we're sitting right alongside the computer programmers. They would never go on this, so now we're doing it from our offices, so the programmers sit there while the game is being played. And that causes some really interesting things because the commentators have got no idea what's coming next. This went live to air in America.
Whoa, this is new. Wow, is that fancy? 100 feet in the air. Major League average is 87, 404. Major League average is 401. It hit that cartoon character right in the neck. 30-degree launch angle, 103 miles an hour. I like that.
I like that. So here's something, I just added this in, so I hope I don't kind of run out of time. I keep talking to people and adding stuff into the presentation. But I was talking to the esports guys out there, and we're talking about digital data. So, we talked about turning digital data into pictures that people could understand. We got involved in the COVID thing because somebody saw what we were doing with golf at Major League Baseball. They called us up and said, we like what you're doing. What could you do? Could you do anything with us? And we said, what data have you got? Send it to us. So they sent us some data. The data they have is phenomenal. And here's an example. Yes. Yeah. So here's the level of data. So the first lot of data came and we did this with it. And it's pretty amazing. This is coming live from 17 games to our office in Dunedin, and the computer is making these animations. But that's how it started. And as we go along, you'll notice it gets better and better. So the stick figures look really cool, but that's all coming from data sent to us in Dunedin. Then we thought, what if we put some bodies around these? So there we go, and watch these. So it's tracking everybody on the pitch, everybody everywhere, and the ball's being thrown back. That's all coming to us. And we thought, we can make these a little better. So now, here we go. Notice all of the players are moving and the computer is chasing this animation with no one operating. And digital data into pictures. There goes the data into pictures. And here we go. This is data of somebody running. And you can go to any camera angle you want. That's all happening in the cloud, and then we're analysing bat swings, all coming from the data that we're getting. And then you go, we've got this data, why don't we start putting it over real pictures somewhere? There we go. So that's the one you've just seen. But you start to see digital data into pictures that people can understand. And one of the reasons we do this is we have a really simple reason. It is to show the people sitting at home on the couch why they're on the couch and these guys are playing. So anyway, it goes on, and that goes on. I'll jump through that now, just make sure I don't have time. Actually, I'll let it go, because as you're looking at all of this, so see this? That's all coming from digital data, and we've never been to a game of baseball ever. So, and we don't even know the rules, The computer has learnt the rules, so it's doing that bit, which is the actually it's coming up here. This one here, this is the first time this has ever been done.
First strike, and he's pointing at the ears. We got our first challenge.
First challenge here.
Never been done before.
You said these are supposed to move pretty quick. The home plate umpire taps his head, and we'll get the quick challenge here.
There should be a monitor, something up on the big board that...
Now this has been done by a computer. There is no person involved in this at all.
Let's see.
So this is coming with every ball ever pitched in a game in baseball. They can do this, and the computer does it in the cloud. So that's the first ever challenge for a DRS coming out of Dunedin, made by this company that no one's heard of, and that's it. So people look at this stuff and go, God, you don't understand technology. You're bored in a house in Ropinga. You're 72 years old. How did you get involved in one of these? I always used to say, the answer's simple. I just surrounded myself with really clever white people. And in the context of discussions that are going on at this gathering, I believe that. I mean, when I think about how I was educated, how I was brought up, how I was thinking, it was absolutely natural for me to think, shit, I'm lucky I found these white people that can do this stuff, because I can't. So I always believed that. until I saw a lecture given by this professor, Professor Lisa Matto-Smith. She did a study with National Geographic, studying the DNA of human migration from Africa 70, 80,000 years ago to the end of human migration, which was the final steps of Moriori onto the Chatham Islands, with New Zealand one step back. Just a reminder of that. So anyway, she studied that, and this is what she said about what she discovered. The Polynesian navigation around the Pacific is truly one of the greatest feats in human history. I think it's something that all humans should understand and be proud of. Now, I typed into Google after I left that lecture, map of human migration, and this is what I found. Kind of interesting, isn't it? There's a big blue space there in the middle. It covers a third of the planet. It is the largest expanse of open water on Earth, and it can fit every continent on Earth inside it with room to move. It's so big it can fit Mars inside it with room to move, and yet when I typed in map of human migration, it is as though nobody ever went there. So this was something to be proud of, because this is that story.
3,500 years ago, our Polynesian ancestors set out across the mighty Pacific Ocean, the largest expanse of open water on the planet, on what was to become one of the greatest voyages of discovery in human history. As they journeyed out from Southeast Asia across the Pacific, they became master navigators, guided by their knowledge of the stars, learning to read the wind and waves, following the pathways of the birds and sea creatures around them. They spent thousands of years exploring Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. They discovered islands like Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Rarotonga, Tahiti, Hawaii, and Rapa Nui Easter Island. They even made it as far as South America. 1,000 years ago, our great voyager Kupe set sail from Hawaii in a state-of-the-art double-hulled waka, a waka haurua, on a voyage of discovery that would take him across thousands of kilometres of the Pacific Ocean. Guided only by the stars, the sun, and the ocean currents, this was no accidental voyage. He had set out for a land he knew was there, the land of the long white cloud, Aotearoa. When Kupe returned with directions, a new wave of migration began across the Pacific Ocean. More than 500 years later, Captain Cook, guided by a Tahitian navigator called Te Paia, followed in Kupe's footsteps, arriving in New Zealand in 1769.
So that's where my history of New Zealand began. I'd heard about Kupe, but that's one of those Maori myths and legends. It wasn't something you took seriously. So it's no wonder I have grown up thinking that I needed to surround myself with really clever white people, when that amazing story of science, technology, engineering and math is in my DNA. And it has always been. You do not cross a third of the planet without science, technology, engineering and math. In 2019, 250, we all remember that. That was the celebration, not the celebration, commemoration of the arrival of Captain Cook. And the government decided that as part of this commemoration, they would acknowledge the incredible voyaging of our Pacifica voyages. And as part of that, this waka haurua left Tahiti. It's 4,000 kilometre journey, and it was skippered by this 23-year-old Tahitian wahine. So that's 4,000 kilometres. We put some of our gear on it to see how she did, because they travelled 4,000 kilometres with no navigation, with just using the stars, the sun and the ocean currents. The white line is where you'd go if you had the gear. What she is doing it using stars, sun and ocean currents. 4,000 kilometres, 3.5 weeks to Port Tauranga, and the zigzag there, they had to slow down to wait for the Endeavour, which was only coming from Sydney. What I really like, and I'm sure this has been discussions that have gone on today, this is the afterguard on the back of the boat. That's navigator, that's India, the 23-year-old skipper of the entire waka. Over on the right there, that's Moyata, who is one of the two celestial navigators that guided that vessel 4,000 kilometres across Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. Now, I always ask this, how many people in this room knew that happened. See, generally it's about 3, but again, I'd expect that, but it's not a lot. And this is my question. If this was, 2 Year 250 was a celebration of the story of Pacifica voyaging, how come there were no TV cameras in Tahiti? How come there were no politicians in Tahiti? And how come most people in this country never heard that story during 2 Year 250? So I might have been brought up in schools in the 1950s and 60s, but this was 2019. And we didn't tell that story, which is our story. It is the story of Kupe's voyage from Hawaii to New Zealand, delivered to us by a 23-year-old wahine toa. And here's the other thing about 250, the year 250, 2019. Not only was it Captain Cook, it was also the 50th anniversary of man landing on the moon. Now we heard all about that. I want to introduce you now to Noinoi Barclay Kerr, who is a sailor on a wakahaurua. She is 23 years old. English is her second language. She was brought up in a kura kaupapa, and she has never, ever been on TV.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff.
50 years ago, NASA sent astronauts to the moon. There it is, over there. No one on it, just a quick visit up and back, then a big parade, and they were famous for life. But over 800 years ago, my tupuna made a journey just as hard and just as amazing. Over 4,000 kilometres from here in West Polynesia, across the mighty Pacific to Aotearoa, a land they knew that was there. How? Birds. When you hang out on an island long enough without an iPad, you start to notice stuff. Like how the long-tailed Pacific cuckoo would travel south every spring. You watch them do this for 100 years. They go, they come back, they go, they come back, and then you start to think, there's land down south, I just need to find it. So if every spring you set sail on the same line as the cuckoo, you'll find that land that they're flying to. Who's brave enough and smart enough to do this? Maui and his mates. They sailed south, over the horizon, found Aotearoa, came back and told everyone, Anana, famous for life, astronaut of his time.
See, what an amazing story to share. Actually, I forgot the most important bit when I was talking about that data before, because this was an opportunity that did not exist when I walked into this building. It exists now. I walked in and I saw what they were doing with esports. So you saw all of that data that we're catching from baseball, from cricket, from that. You as organisations own that data. Major League Baseball owns all of the data we deal with, and we are turning those into different platforms across all platforms. I saw what was happening in the esports game. So imagine if we will work with the esports developers. We are going to develop an esports tool that uses all of this data that comes from Major League Baseball, because we have the right to do that for them. We will be able to go to all the big bosses at Major League Baseball and say, look at what we've done, do you want this? And imagine this now. So people will be able to face every ball that's pitched in one of those environments against the fields that are all in place with runners who will run because of the way you've hit the ball. And I just saw that over there. Now imagine we do cricket. Imagine we do rugby. We have every game of golf with the PGA. We have a 10-year contract with them whose job it is to find them how they actually monetize that data. Well, how about you now go play golf against Tiger or thing while they're playing with the data, and we use tools that are developed here in New Zealand by that whole marvellous lot of people out the door. That we wouldn't have even had that discussion, that korero, if we hadn't come in. And the most important thing is, I do want to talk about there is some conversation about involved with Māori and doing this, and you have to take those paths. Sometimes you've got to be careful that you don't land in a place that's more hui than dui. And I have seen that. So we will have that conversation. There won't be any business plan because the idea is really shit hot. It is a great idea, and I like those people out there. So if all you do is have a good idea, work with people you like, it will happen. So that brings me to this. So the footsteps we laid down in our path. We decided we would build a platform, a school platform that's been gifted to every primary intermediate school in the country for free. And I say this, I've given up talking to old people. You have an exclusion for today, but that's it. I'm only talking to young people because they inspire me. So we've given this platform free to every primary and intermediate, and you should see the stuff they're doing with it. But we launched it with Team New Zealand, who, and how we tie it, those footsteps tied to our past. So Grant accepted that actually this wakahaurua was a state-of-the-art flying machine back in its day, invented 3,000 years ago by our tipuna. And the line between that and Te Rehutai, the flying machine that retained the America's Cup, is unbroken. We launched it with them on the basis too, and you'll be talking to Pete, but Pete and Blair came on board and encompassed this idea as sailing in the footsteps of Maui and Kupe. See what happens when you tell a story? You tell a story properly, tell a story with excitement, and everybody's on board. So these two guys, I suppose people will be able to talk about it later, but they are now part of the voyaging group. They sail on that voyaging group, and they are learning and they are teaching, which is incredible. So here's one of the other things. I know we're talking about the involvement of women. So again, we talk about sexism and racism. Let me actually quickly deal with racism. Here's a line I got. So I'm 11 years old. I'm at a boarding school in Masterton when a Marist brother hits me on the back of the head and says, "You're not on the par now, Hori." I'm 11 at the school. What do you think I thought as an 11-year-old? I thought, shit, when did I become a Hori? That's my cousins back home in Rauponga. I'm not a Hori. My dad's the Pākehā teacher. See, you've got to put it in context. You've got to put it in time. Brother Morris was his name, footsteps in front. I know if Brother Morris saw what we were doing now, he would be so proud. So you've got to put things in context and in time. And we talk about sexism. I've never thought of sexism because I was brought up in Rauponga where I know in the Māori culture, Māori women get shit done. You look at who led the marches. You look at who stood on Bastion Point. They get the shit done. And I know my aunties would never, ever try to break through a glass ceiling that is imposed by white men because it would mean they'd have to bend over. So, here we've got Elise. See that there? Elise Beavis up there in the corner. I first met Elise Beavis when I think she was probably 20, and I was in with the design team for America's Cup, and they were designing the boat that was to race in Bermuda with the peddlers. And I was in the thing, there's Dan Bernasconi, all these guys at their supercomputers, and this girl walks in with a bag of muffins. And she goes around, she puts them on the table, and honestly, I take full blame for this. I looked at her and thought, shit, what a cool job for a young girl, bringing muffins to these clever guys, these clever white guys. Anyway, she puts the muffins down, walks over, fires up this bloody great big computer, and Dan Bernasconi walks over and sits beside her as she explains to Dan Bernasconi the wind currents and the design of the bikes and where they have to go if this thing is going to work. So this story sits in this platform that is in our schools, and imagine how it inspires our young girls.
One of the things to try and be fast and competitive is to have stable flight. So if you're going up and down all the time, you're not going to win any races. You want to put all your energy into going forward. There's not much point wasting energy going up and down. So last campaign we looked at different options for how the boat could be powered, and one was traditional grinding and another one was cycling. If you think about how strong you are and how much smaller your arms are than your legs, it seems like a no-brainer.
See how simple a story that is? And just to be clear, Ministry of Education put no money into this. This is in every school, and we're doing it in the spirit of our call. There are no teachers, there are no pupils. We are all teachers, we are all pupils, and we have assumed that no one can read. We are storytellers. So every story is told with a 3-minute video that inspires discussion, debate, and new things. And the kids are doing amazing things. I'll just show you this. This group of kids decided they'd build a museum at their school that studied Pacific voyaging. I'm just going to run quickly through. Here's what they came up with. These kids are 5 to 6 years old. They would never have heard of a waka haurua before we launched the platform. Here they are 3D printing them. Here they are using something called makey or some stuff like that. I don't understand, but they're doing all this stuff. And then, of course, we designed it so we took the digital divide into account. To run this platform, all you need is a screen and an internet connection. That's it, because we know not all schools can do it. And yes, you might have 3D printers, but there's nothing wrong with a crayon and a piece of paper. And that's what they're doing. And then I get invited to this. It is an e-games competition here in Christchurch where 26 or something number of schools have got together. They're using something called Minecraft. They've designed a game. They're having a competition to design a waka haurua to race across the Pacific Ocean using celestial navigation. When we delivered this platform, this is primary and intermediate, when we delivered this platform to schools, we had no idea how it was going to be used. That's why I get excited talking to young people. Then the middle one, we've talked about sustainability. I have to go quite fast, I'm running out of time. Papatuanuku Breathe. Listen to this as another version of what we learned from COVID and compare this 9-year-old Māori girl educated in a kura kaupapa, English, her second language, and tell me if you can think of any politician that makes more sense than she does.
At 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday the 25th of March 2020, Aotearoa stopped. A nation was still. But if you listened, you could hear Papatuanuku, the Earth Mother, breathing. The wind over our maunga, our mountains. The waves on our moana, our oceans. And the songs of the children of Tani. Our lives, normally so loud and busy, became soft and distant. We learned what was truly important. Our whānau, our friends. And Papatuanuku spoke to us. Look what happens when you take cars off the road. Look what happens when you close factories producing pointless plastic. Papatuanuku will clean the air. Papatuanuku will clean the water. Papatuanuku's message is simple. We are all connected. The people, the plants, the animals. Aotearoa is our waka, and we need to find ways to look after it. He waka eke noa. Papatuanuku is guiding us. Are we ready to listen?
So, are we ready to listen? Papatuanuku's message is simple. We are all connected. Connections. We are all connected. The people, the plants, the animals. That is a 9-year-old girl describing biodiversity, the future of our country. And I had a whole lot of stuff about why you didn't get rid of growing food and plants from yesterday, but I'm going to have to go really fast. We do have messages as well, other messages. So this is the team I coached. Undefeated, I have to say. So the Dunedin Blues under-8s, undefeated in 1966. I trained them. We were at the Dunedin Rugby Club, which is out on St Kilda. So we used to play out on the rugby field at St Kilda, and at the end of each game, we used to run over at least 3 lots of sand dunes to go swimming, Those are the edges of the rugby field today. So those lessons have been coming for a very long time. I was there yesterday, and this one here, you can see the base of the pole now. So, Papa Tuanuku has been sending us messages for ages. This is the funniest video you've seen, but I've got to have to keep going. Unfortunately, do I have to keep going, or do you want to hear it? Oh, you've got to see this. You've got to see this. This ad was made in 1954. I was 4. Look at this for diversity.
I noticed you all wear buttons with SPI on them. What does SPI mean?
Society of the Plastics Industry. Certainly plastics are recognized as the contemporary material of our age, and it's easy to look a few years ahead. Now, before we had plastics, design was limited by the characteristics of natural materials. But along came plastics and changed everything.
I'll say they did. Why, I can clean our whole place in a jiffy. Light as a feather and good looking too.
Your refrigerator is full of plastics too,
My refrigerator?
both inside and out. It's full of plastics no matter what make you have.
I suppose it's because plastics do so many things better.
And so many more things. That's why plastics are used in place of natural materials.
You see, we have plastics all around us. Do I win?
In this game, everybody wins.
Cool, eh? And she's right. We have plastics all around you. In my lifetime, this is now an island made of plastics, 4 times the size of Mexico in the Atlantic Ocean. So that's, and you would have seen the report a month or so ago, 76% of all fish caught off the coast of New Zealand have plastic. So that's why it's important to look at those footsteps that lay down in the past. Here's why I have confidence in our young people. Again, Noinoi's one, the other one, Hinarapa, again, Kura Kaupapa educated. I challenge you to find anybody who speaks better than these two, in politics at least, and listen to the connections.
We are all responsible for what we have, the entire world, you know, and to keep on going on for the next generation. It's not like just a Māori or Pacific responsibility to protect, but it's whoever lives in it, and it's for all the other oceans, you know, that we're all connected. It's just, where is that connection? And I think that's what Tuia has done for us, is started the conversations in terms of where we can find those connections and how we can build on those connections.
This is where it is. At a new beginning, Mahia. The very first place to see the light of day, and now, in partnership with Pākehā, a place where today's state-of-the-art waka are being sent back to the very stars that brought us here. Isn't it amazing how far we've come and how far we can still go?
So, as we look at Te Tiriti, and I know Te Tiriti, the treaty, as we've been discussing it today, we can keep looking back at things that were wrong, or we can look at how far we've come and how far we can still go. We can listen to these young wahine toa and be optimistic, inspired, and start to move forward. And this is what happens. I'm going to jump, I won't leave these up, but these are a couple of Māori who are working with scientists, and they're using seaweed to reduce the amount of methane in cows. So don't reduce the cows, reduce the methane. Now, here's a number that I'm going to run through this, but this is one of the messages that came through loud and clear. This is a population clock running right now. That is the population of the Earth growing. Down there, population today, 129,000. So since January the 12th or 11th, whatever it was, when the first person died of COVID in 2020, 10 million people have died of COVID. The population of the planet has increased by 300 million. Those are the questions we need to be talking about. Mentioned He Waka Ekanoa. You know, we all talk about the way we need to look after the planet. Papa Tuanuku doesn't need us. 65 million years ago, this happened to her.
Here's the first one. 65 million years ago, time when giant dinosaurs roamed the earth. And there he is.
Oh, it's a bit bright with the lights, these dinosaurs in there.
All of these dinosaurs once lived on the land that makes up Aotearoa.
These ones, those ones there.
Their fossils have been discovered in the North Island, around Hawke's Bay. There's another reason we've stopped off at 65 million years, and it's about to show itself. Chicxulub impactor, an asteroid 10 kilometers wide, traveling at 72,000 kilometers an hour. It hit Earth where Mexico is today, creating a crater that was almost 200 kilometers wide. The blast traveled around the world, killing every animal that weighed over 25 kilograms.
So, pretty amazing. She survived that 65 million years ago. Take a look outside. There she is. She doesn't need us to look after her. And these pictures are from the latest web thing, looking out into the universe. So what I leave you as you walk out of here today, in that entire universe, you would not walk out the door and see those trees, see those animals, see those birds, see those waters. He waka eke noa. We are all on this amazing waka together, and it is the only one in the universe that does that. So, as we start to look at all of the reasons to come together, that's a really powerful one. And we've talked about, what we can do. Look what these women, these wahine toa, are doing with joy, with laughter. I mean, they just grin all the time. It is fabulous. And if we need to know a reason to be doing this, I'd like to share with you my 2.5, he was 2.5 when I shot this, grandson, Jackson.
Look at him.
Papa Tuanuku's message is simple. We are all connected. The people, the plants, the animals. And in that 34 seconds, a 2.5-year-old sat in that place and admired Papa Tuanuku. The people, the plants, the animals. We are all together. And if we all share the same why, the hows get really easy. Thank you. And I'm sorry I'm over time.